Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit series video from the subreddit HFY called Clint Stone Chapter 11 Retribution. Written by some guy named Ted. The link to the original will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy, and if you do, please consider subscribing. The watch arrived, pushing their way through the crowd. Even in a backwater frontier town, a shooting in a public restaurant draws the attention of the law. If only to keep up appearances. They questioned several people, decided there was nothing to be done here. The killer would be too hard to catch. Besides, it was just an orphan boy, one of the hundreds in a town like this. It was lucky that none of them mentioned the sentiment to Clint. Otherwise, they would have not left with their heads. They released the body to Clint, as the boy had no other family. He took the Regon boy back to Susan, and he dressed him up as best he could. Clint flew the body to the highest mountain and the planet, and buried Regon at the peak, as close to the stars as he could. Clint remained on top of the mountain, standing in silent grief for hours, despite the cold winds and the snow. When he was done, Clint returned to the ship, and we flew in silence back down to the town. I could feel the rage building inside of him. We landed. "What are we going to do now?" I asked Clint, already knowing the answer. Now we make them pay. The Thieves Guild will pay for every child that they have forced into servitude and then cast aside. They will pay for every second they took from Regan, and they will pay for the happiness they stole from this world. They will pay for the blood and their tears and their shattered bones. Stone's voice was harsh, harsher still than when he threatened to throw junkies. All of the rage Clint had bottled up was beginning to seep out the cracks, forming into a wall that had built up to keep it in, and I did not want to be in the way when that burst. His face was calm, unnaturally calm. He turned to me, and his pupils flickered in rage, a dark red shifting deep within his eye. Just far enough past the range of normal vision that I couldn't focus on it. "I'm going to rip them apart. Every last one. Thief bastards will feel my hands around their neck before it follows his friends into the void." I swallowed. If there was one thing that I wished to never face, it was an angry Clint Stone. I would willingly fly into the heart of a supernova if it meant that I could escape his rage. And the Thieves Guild had angered him beyond anything that I'd ever seen before. He stood up and walked out into the bay, and with the air of calm surrounding him, that calm terrified me. That calm signaled something terrible, but I did not know what. I followed him to the bay to see him putting on his suit, the one that could stop plasma bolts. Over that, he wore his normal clothes, well-fitted and brown leather pants, a deep red shirt open below the neck, and a long coat, designed to look like it was on the verge of becoming a tattered old rag, but was actually quite sturdy. Around his neck, Clint placed Rogan's oddly carved necklace, the one that meant family. On his head, instead of the suit's helmet, rested a wide-brimmed hat. He cut an imposing figure. I quickly slipped into my suit and tugged my clothes over the top. As I struggled with my outer dress, Clint walked over to the wall and flipped a panel that I had never seen before. Underneath lay an arsenal of knives, pistols, rifles, grenades, a minigun, and a missile launcher filled the compartment. Clint sifted through it and pulled out a particularly wicked curved knife. He smiled and tucked it under his coat. Beside it, he added two of those strange metal pieces with spikes and holes in the sides that he called brass knuckles. 4 more ordinary, albeit razor-edged knives and several pistols. "What are you doing?" he asked me, a voice normal. He had finished arming himself and was studying me, frozen in place with my suit half on, staring at the open arsenal. He looked around and noticed what I was staring at. He sighed and shut the panel. "It's just something for a rainy day," he explained. "There are enough weapons in there to field a small army," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He grunted and tightened his gun belt, which he had pulled from the cache and hid under his coat. I shook my head and finished dressing. I went to the regular armory and pulled out a pair of pistols. "What are you doing?" Clint asked me again. "I'm coming with you. I may not have liked Regon as much as you, but he deserves justice. Damn right he deserves justice. But that will wait. Right now, we need information." I couldn't believe my ears. Raccoon was dead, the boy Clint had basically adopted, and he was still going on about information on Swarm Empire. He must have seen something in my face, because he said, "I'm going to find one of those thief bastards, and he's going to sing." I didn't know how singing would help the situation, but I assumed that Clint meant he was going to interrogate said thief. "And I'm coming with you," I insisted. I wasn't going to be left out of this. "You're staying here. I won't be gone long." With that, he backed out of the ship and shut the door. I stood with my jaw open, staring at the door. Then I slumped in my suit, relieved. I had not wanted to stay 1 minute more in Clint's calm presence, but I felt obliged to help. This gave me an excuse to be away from Clint. I settled back in my chair, putting up my vid player to wait for his return. Hours passed and nothing changed. The ship ran automated systems checks and the wind picked up, whistling against the side of the ship. When the bay door opened, I leapt out of my chair. Clint walked in, half carrying, half dragging a figure clad in black. He flipped the being onto the nearest bench hard. He pulled the straps from under the bench and began to tie the figure down. "Is that?" I asked. "No, but it's one of his friends. She put up a good fight." Clint said, "She." As I looked closer, I could see that the being was indeed female. Clint finished with the last strap, tightening it with a sudden jerk. The being on the table moved her head, and I could see that she was awake, and so could Clint. He rounded the bench and stood at the head. He reached down and ripped the mask off of the being's head, and a pair of slit gold eyes set deep in the pale reptilian face stared back at us, telling me that this being was a Finra. Clint smiled. It was not a pleasant sight. "I am glad that you could join us. There are a few things you need to know. You and your friends have taken children from the streets and tortured and abused them until they agreed to work for you. For this, I will punish you. You and your friends are responsible for the deaths of over 100 children in the last 5 years alone. For this, I will punish you." Clint's voice was light, conversational, cheerful. It seemed disturbingly out of place for the situation that we found ourselves in. "I want you to know one simple fact. You are going to die, right here in this ship, on this bench. No one is coming to save you. But you have a choice. You can die in screaming agony, pain coming from every nerve in your body, growing ever worse until you beg me to kill you. Or you can tell me what I want to know, and I will end it quick. Your choice." Fenora looked back at him with hate in her eyes. Her mouth moved, and I could see the outline of her tongue moving under her lips. Clint let out a low laugh, a very unpleasant sound. He held up a little white speck on his hand. Looking closely, I could see that it was a tooth, sharp and angled. "Looking for this? That's too bad I took it right after I jumped you in that alley. You look surprised. It's a very old trick, you know, a poison capsule in the tooth. We use stuff like that where I was from all the time. No easy way out for you. So, are you going to tell me what I want to know, or am I going to have to hurt you? Either option is fine by me." His voice was unnaturally calm. With a shock, I realized why the calm seemed so terrible to me. When I had been caught for the first time, back when I was a young thief, I was put in a cell next to this older prisoner. He was nice, friendly, and peaceful. I was scared and jumpy. He spoke to me, telling me that I would be fine and calming me down. He told me his name was Malum Pax. He talked for hours about nothing, but he made it seem like it was nothing like the most important thing in the world. His quiet calm gave me a rock to steady myself in the troubled waters of my mind. In the morning, the guards came and put another prisoner in Malum's cell. He was as kind as gentle to the newcomer. At the first time, I liked me as he had been to me. When the newcomer's back was turned, Malum slit his throat and then sat down and continued talking to me like nothing had happened. I later learned that Malum was in here because he had killed his entire family, his wife, his children, and his children's children. Malum called the watch and sat in his favorite chair, watching for them to come and lock him up, calm as ever. That was the calm that I saw in Clint. "I will never betray the guild," the lizard spat. Clint shrugged and then punched her in the side. I swear I heard a rib crack. The lizard gasped and tried to curl up in pain, but her bonds prevented it. I winced at the blow. "That is the least I can do for you." Clint said, with that calm air of insanity. "Do you have something to say?" The lizard hissed, but said nothing. "I thought not." "Well, let it not be said that I didn't give you a chance." Clint grabbed the lizard's hand in his. "Do you know what I am?" he asked the lizard, and when he got no answer, he continued as if he had. "I'm a human from Earth. Do you know what kind of planet Earth was?" "Earth was a death world. Yes, that's right. I was shocked when I learned that too. Kind of ironic, now that I think about it, but I digress. Earth was a death world, the worst kind of planet that you can find with still support life. Normally, sentient life doesn't evolve there, but we humans were a tough bunch. I doubt that you've seen a human before. I think I'm the only one left in the galaxy. Anyways, the gravity on a death world is quite high in comparison to most others. Everything that lives there has to have a rather large bone and muscle density in order to even walk. In order to do more than walk, like say run or climb, which are necessary skills on a planet where everything is trying to eat you, you need to have a fairly developed musculature. I say fairly developed, but on a death world everything is vastly greater than anywhere else. What I'm getting at is that my hand has a ridiculous amount of muscles in it, in proportion to its size. That muscle is highly developed and I can use it to crush almost anything. I once crushed a rifle. That was a fun night. A rifle is made of metal, a decently strong substance. Your hand, on the other hand, is made of bones. Those are not stronger than metal. Well, mine are, but I evolved on a death world. You didn't. There is nothing to stop me doing this," Clint finished as he tightened his grip on the lizard's hand. Slowly tightening his hand until I could see the knuckles turn white, Clint stared into the lizard's eyes. They stared flat and angry, but they soon grew large and pained. She started to struggle against Clint's grip, trying to free her hand. Clint's grip was too strong and she couldn't even budge it. I heard a snap and the lizard screamed. Snap, snap, snap. Clint didn't stop. The lizard screamed louder and louder with each broken bone. Clint squeezed harder. I heard the bones shatter and the tendons rip. My spine crawled at the noise. The lizard's screams grew so loud that I was forced to cover my ears from the pain. The crushed bones broke through the scaled skin and her blue blood dripped down the bench and then onto the floor, where it pooled. Drops of red mixed in with the blue and the bone fragments worked their way into Clint's hand. Clint squeezed until the lizard fainted. He lifted his hand and revealed the mangled remains of the thief's hand, barely more than a bloody pulp of crushed bones and flesh. He looked on in interest and then grabbed the string of rope from the ground. He tied it in a tight on the thief's upper arm, making a tourniquet so that she wouldn't bleed to death. Noticing the red blood on the rope, Clint looked at his hand, seemingly just noticing the bone fragments embedded in his flesh. He picked them out with a disinterested motions. I shivered. Angry Clint was scary, but this calm, dispassionate Clint was enough to make the nightmares run. I didn't know how much more of this I could handle. Clint was clearly insane. Not in the ridiculous, over-the-top way that he does things, but truly, deeply sick in the mind. At first I thought that Regan's death had done that to him, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Clint had always been on the verge of madness. The sullen, angry Clint that I had known during my time with him after the slave markets was the one who had been so deeply scarred by something that he had experienced. He had retreated into himself, leaving nothing but an empty husk. At times the true Clint shined through, when he had saved that little girl from the flow den, and he had risked his life for the station. But most of the time he was just the remnants, the angry, damaged Clint that people saw. When Clint met Regan, his true self had been drawn back out. He had thought it was safe to feel again, and he had found someone to love again. But the Thieves' Guild had taken Regan from him, and now I didn't know if the true Clint had survived the trauma, or if he was dead, leaving just a broken husk. Clint picked up a bucket from the other workbenches and filled it with water and tapped from the wall. He poured it slowly over the thief's head, waking her. She gasped and inhaled the water. She began to cough and sputter, but Clint didn't stop. He poured until the bucket was empty. The thief lay, gasping for breath, and covered in spit from her own frantic attempts to force the water out of her lungs. "Are you ready to talk now?" Clint asked in a cheerful, calm voice of Malum Pax. Tell me what I want to know, and I will kill you quickly. If you refuse, my hands are itching for another go. I will never tell you anything, gasped the thief. Yes, you will, Clint said, pulling a knife from his coat and jamming it into the ragged stump of the lizard's hand, forcing it up into the forearm. The lizard screamed, and I emptied out the contents of my stomach on the floor. I backed hurriedly out of the bay and rushed to my room. I curled up on the bed and cried. I had never seen such a wanton torture before, and it was too much for me. A scream came again, resounding through the ship. I covered my ears and prayed for it to end. Several hours later, it did. Clint wandered into my room, covered from head to toe in blue, dripping blood. She talked, he said, in a voice that didn't betray the efforts that he'd taken to make her talk. They have a center of operations underneath one of the old warehouses. The one who killed Raccoon is the second in command. We're in luck, because though it is one night of the month where all of the members are in the same building, gathering for some meeting or ritual. I couldn't really tell between the screams, but we have what we need. He tossed the gun belt at me. Strap up, we're going to war. Clint didn't bother to change clothes or grab any guns for himself. Instead, as we walked by the arsenal that he'd hidden under the panel, he grabbed a few dozen knives. I tried not to look at the bloody mess at the center of the room, but it drew my eye like a translator error. No exact idiom equivalent. Closest substitute flies to crap. There wasn't much left of it other than a pile of bones and meat. Clint walked down the ramp and into the town. At night, this place was different. No children roamed the streets, not many adults either. Only the hardest of the inhabitants dared wander after dark. But Stone was the hardest of them all. The few souls wandering the streets fled before the bloody spectre that was Clint Stone on a warpath. He marched with a single-minded determinedness, his heading straight for the target. Out of the night loomed a wide dark grey building, constructed in rusted metal sheets and concrete pillars. Wasting no time, Clint set himself in front of the doors off to the side and smashed the door down with his foot, propelling them down the stairs behind. With a loud crash, the doors collided with the sentry at the bottom, knocking him flat. His boots produced a muffled thud as Clint tramped down on the center of the Thieves' Guild. I readied my pistols and followed him. Where he speared the sentry through the ear with his wicked curved knife, Clint strode deep into the guild, shouting at the top of his lungs, come out, wherever you are. Papa Clint is here, and he's brought gifts." A black-clad man ran from the door to the side, pistol blazing. Clint leaned casually to the side, avoiding the plasma fire. Jumping across the distance separating them, Clint landed next to the surprised thief, whose wide eyes only had the chance to see metal glinting on Clint's upraised fist before his head was caved in. "One down, 11 to go," Clint cried to the empty hallways. "Who's next?" The door hinge squeaked to the left, and I saw a being flow out from behind the door, only to be pinned by a thrown knife from Clint. "Two down." Clint walked down the hall to the caved-in another door with his foot. "Peek-a-boo!" he shouted as he dove into the room. The sounds of breaking furniture and shattered bones came from the open door. A loud, long shriek of pain sounded, only to be cut off. "5 down, only 7 to go. Lucky number 7. I should have been shocked by the brutality with which Clint dispatched the thieves, but I had grown numb. I saw that the man I had known, damaged though he may have been, was gone, and all that remained was a demon of death and destruction. I watched as the thief ran from Clint. He didn't run fast enough. Clint grabbed the thief's neck with one hand and his head with the other, and ripped the thief's head clean off his shoulders. The blood sprayed on the wall, and I gazed at it blankly. Clint dispatched several more thieves with similarly gruesome tactics. I don't know when, but at some point he began to laugh. "Looks like there's only 2 left. I wonder where they could be." The last door at the end of the hall was the only one undisturbed by Clint's savage invasion. I heard a deadbolt thrown to prevent the door from being opened, but I knew that would not stop the man of stone. Clint rushed the door, slamming into it with his shoulder. The hinges gave way and Clint fell into the room. He sprang to his feet. I followed him, keeping to my feet. Facing him were 2 beings, neither clad in black. The older one, had a large rifle in their hands and was pointing it directly at Clint. The second, younger than the first, clutched a large knife in his hand. The other was bandaged from his wrist to his elbow. This was the one who had killed Raccoon. This was the one who had destroyed Clint's stone. This was the one who had paid the full price. "So, any chance we can talk about this?" said Clint. "I don't suppose I could get you to drop that rifle." "No? All right, then." Clint's arm snapped back and shot forward. The wicked curved knife in his fingers had buried itself deep into the chest of the one with the rifle. Clint turned to the bandaged one and smiled. It was the darkest, most depraved smile that I'd ever seen in my life. With one swift motion, before he had time to react, Clint grabbed the bandaged thief and slammed his body to the ground. Ribs cracked, the knife fell from the thief's weak grip and tumbled away. "I am going to enjoy this," growled Clint, the most emotion that he had shown since he had begun. He closed in on the thief and the knife held high in his hand. I knew in that instant what I had to do. I raised my pistol, then I fired. The shot left the end of my gun and entered the thief's head, getting him instantly. Clint rounded on me, anger flashing in his eyes. "Stop!" I shouted at him. "Look at yourself! This bloody, vengeful mess! You shame their memory!" He pulled up short. "You know nothing of them. They're gone, and I have to avenge them," he roared. "They took them from me, and I have to destroy them." "Not if you destroy yourself," I told Clint. "If you're gone, there will be no one left. And you have to be whole." "I haven't been whole since they were alive," he cried. "They were my life, my everything. They were ripped from my arms, and I will kill this whole damn galaxy if I have to get my vengeance." He fell to his knees and sobbed into his hands. "They're gone, and I have nothing. When they died, I shattered. My soul was shattered into a million little pieces, and nothing can put it back together again." Clint sobbed, his whole body heaving with the force of his cries. I knelt beside him and wrapped my arm around him. "The man you were before is gone. But right now, you aren't even a man. You are nothing but a beast, and this does not honor their memory. Those million pieces can't be remade into the old you, but they can be made into a new man, one made in the image of the old, one who they can be proud of. I tightened my grip on him, and I am here to help you. I saved you once in the slave markets. I saved your life. That means that you are my responsibility, and I'll be damned if I let you become the things that took your family." His body shook with his cries. For several minutes only the sound of sobs could be heard, the cries of a man who had lost everything. The sounds came from a deep, dark recesses of Clint's soul, dragging up the memories that he had long suppressed. The cry slowed, his voice cracked with emotion as he began to speak. "They're gone. I held them in my arms, and then they were gone. In that hole they left came pain. For a year, I was numbed by the neural implant. You freed me from that. But with that freedom came the pain. I got in that ship and I flew off, running from the memories. I thought that I had tried hard enough that I could forget. I thought if I killed enough people, got enough money, and enjoyed enough pleasures, that they would fade from my mind. That worked for a while. I thought that I buried them deep enough, but when I met Raccoon, he was just like my boy." Clint's voice faded as he lost himself in his memories. I waited patiently, quietly, for him to start again. "I fell in love with that boy, you know. I had only known him for that day, but he was already my son. And then I thought it safe. I thought that I could move on, but it seems that fate had other plans. I died with him, like I had when my family died. But this time I didn't have the numbness of the mind control to dull the pain. The pain in the raw flesh, and when it came to the pain of the old. You want me to be whole again. You want me to gather up the pieces. I don't know if I can. I've been broken for so long. I don't know if I can find all the pieces." I stood, pushing off my knee, and I offered my hand to Clint. "Then let me help you. I've seen the man that you can be, and I will help you get there. If we have to walk across 1,000 suns, or fight 1,000,000 killers, I will help you pick up the pieces." He reached up and gripped my hand as he did, and he stood and nodded. Then let's leave this place of death. Side by side we walked out of the place of horrors. We had walked in with the shell of a man and a Jahan too weak to help his friend, and walked out with that shell filled, and I had brought him back. Clint was better after that. He became more like that man that I had seen when Raccoon was around. Together we journeyed to stars, seeking justice for the slain, and that justice was the fall of the Swarm Empire. End of chapter. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support the channel or the author, all the stuff is down below. And as always, I hope that you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next story. Cheers.